Hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. Thank you for joining me on this Thursday, August 11th in the Locher Room. I'm Alan Locher. Actor David A. Gregory is here today to tell us about his recent role guest starring opposite Neil Patrick Harris in the new Netflix hit comedy Uncoupled. David is perhaps best known for his role as Robert Ford on the daytime drama One Life to Live. He has also had recurring roles on The Good Fight, Insatiable, Constantine, and Deception. In addition to these, he has also appeared on Instincts, Shades of Blue, Bull, The Night Shift, Elementary, Law & Order, and Gossip Girl. Other credits include How Do You Know?, the title role in Dirty Sexy Saint for Passionflix, and a romance novel hero, Sebastian, in a national commercial campaign for Airborne. David won a Voice Arts Award for writing and producing the scripted podcast Powder Burns, currently available on Apple Podcasts, in which he also voices alongside Emmy winner John Wesley Shipp, Robert Vaughn, and Edward Asner. His play, Hank and Jim Build a Plane, about the 40-year friendship of Henry Fonda and James Stewart, will debut in New York City later this year. Please welcome to the Locher Room, David A. Gregory. Hey, David.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks for being here. Congratulations on Uncoupled. I
Thank
finished
you.
the series, and I surely hope it returns for a season 2.
Oh, well, fingers crossed. I hope not only does it return, but I hope they find some way to bring me back as well. Just putting that out there to the to the universe.
Absolutely, Corey. Absolutely. Not ruining it for anybody, but Neil needs to definitely make it up to Corey.
Well, and then again, no spoilers, but I also think Corey can make it up to Neil's character Michael too. They both have some making up to do.
Totally. Tell me, what was it like working with Neil?
Oh my God, this is how you know someone's a true leader on and off the screen. It's just the way he conducts himself. I think he's very aware of his fame and why he's important to people, and he's certainly the celebrity I think that has the broadest audience of anybody I've ever worked with. You know, there's the Broadway community that adores him, not only because he hosted the Tonys, because he's been on Broadway himself. Certainly How I Met and How I Met Your Mother plays a big part of that, which is, I think, part of the appeal of the show. And that's something I was talking to the creators about, is they're like, well, because Neil's on the show, you get all the How I Met Your Mother bros that are like, well, I don't know if I want to watch this kind of show, but then they'll watch because Neil is leading it, and he's obviously a comedic genius, and he's a physical comedy connoisseur as well. He talked about that a lot. So we're on top of a ski mountain talking about Jerry Lewis pratfalls, and I'm a huge Jerry Lewis fan, so I couldn't get enough of that. But then, so we shot a very special scene in a hot tub that I won't give too much away about, but the way he was about that, making sure I was comfortable, making sure the scene was working, as well as being funny and spontaneous, but within the bounds of what we needed to do. Of course, we had an intimacy coordinator on set, which was really nice. And then after it was all said and done, the guy made me an old fashioned. He made me a drink. You know what I'm saying? And there's just something about that. I think, especially in the theater community in New York City, people talk about what it's like to have, the lead on Broadway usually sets the tone. So you'll hear a lot of people talk about Hugh Jackman backstage at the Music Man. He's always remembering people's birthdays. And it's the same thing when you're in a TV show or a movie and you're number one on the call sheet. And Neil is the epitome of that. And I think to a certain degree, when you are that, you have to know that you are. That's part of it. But then backing it up with humility and grace is like, I'd say 95% of it, and he does it. And he's just a class act. And I would work with him again in a heartbeat, obviously.
I love that. And where was that mountaintop?
That's in a town. The lodge is in Big Indian, New York, which is about 2 hours north of New York by car. And then I think we were at Belvedere ski slope.
Okay. Yeah. Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. And of course, we're driving up and there's a lot of fog, and then we get on top of the mountain to start shooting, and then the clouds lift like it's a movie. It's really, you could have asked for a better day.
Knowing you have to be in a hot tub is, and not to give stuff away, but, is there a particular audition they look for from you?
That's a great question. First and foremost, I made my audition tape thinking I'm not going to get this part. And the biggest reason is because, and I think this is appropriate to talk about, there's a movement for authentic casting today. And oftentimes, and I talked to Jeff Richmond, the creator of the show, and he mentioned this to me. He's like, it was really important that everybody who played leads on the show were of the LGBTQI community. And he's like, but when it came to having these guest stars come in, we wanted the best person for the job, gay or straight. So he's like, I just want to clear the air and let you know that you're here because we want you here. And I was like, well, thank you. It means a lot. I felt like a guest in somebody else's house. And I felt like a welcome guest. And so I say that to say, I made the audition tape. I was so relaxed because I was so sure I wasn't going to get it, that I think that that's partly why I ended up getting it in the first place. But part of it was sort of relaxing because, we're in a hot tub. So I did take off my shirt, but it's just from here up. So I literally used this frame and I put my arms out like this as if I was sitting in a hot tub. And,
you had a towel from here down, right?
I did. Well, and I think it's fair to say, like like many people in the pandemic, I gained a few pounds. And so I was like, well, how am I going to do this? And I was like, well, he is in a hot tub, so this is how it would be.
I love that.
So I was very relaxed, and my wife was reading opposite me. And in fact, if you really want to see one of the scenes that we shot, I did put it on my Instagram yesterday to compare what we shot in the audition versus.
Is that the one with the mustache?
That's the one with the mustache. That was the other thing. I was like, they're not going to hire me because I have a mustache. And they said, no, David is the choice for the role. Please make sure he's available for these dates. And please make sure he's going to shave the mustache.
The mustache. I love that. I love that. I just want to, I love, the conversation about setting the tone. I heard I had this actor who's been on Days of Our Lives for 50 years, Bill Hayes, on my show. And as I was researching and saw he and his wife, Susan, who met on that show, got a Lifetime Achievement Award. Mm-hmm. And during the ceremony, Bryan Cranston sent in a video. Bryan Cranston was like a day player on Days of Our Lives back in the day. And he showed up late.
Oh my goodness.
And Bill Hayes treated him with such utter respect. Wow. I don't think they've seen each other since, but Bryan made it a point to send that tape in.
Wow.
And is probably like Neil, top of the call sheet, treating everybody with the utmost respect because of the way Bill Hayes treated him.
That's exactly right. I have a story for you on that. We were at the Uncoupled premiere, and I ran into Tuck Watkins, who I hadn't seen since probably a decade, our days on the soap together. But Tuck and I, when I was first starting out on the soap, Tuck was the guy I had all my scenes with. And I was very nervous, and soaps move very quickly. And so it's one thing to be prepared, but it's another thing to be prepared to move that quickly. And so I kept messing up. And Tuck, I watched him do this. He started flubbing his own lines to give me another take so that I would have a better shot at the scene. Wow. I have never forgotten that. And I saw him and I was like, I have to tell you this because I've been telling people this story for years and I've never actually gotten to tell you how much this meant to me. Because if he had not set that tone for me and I had a bad experience shooting, who's to say if I would have really enjoyed this kind of work? Working in television is not easy and it's not for everybody. But if you have a good experience to it, it can at least make you want to go back. And I was very emotional about it because he didn't have to do that.
Right.
And Tuck said, well, I did it for you because somebody did it for me. And he told me that Erica Slezak, of course, the queen of daytime herself on One Life to Live, did it for him. And she even said, she's like, in the middle of a take, she'd go, can we, hold on one second. Can we just adjust this light really quick? The light did not need to be adjusted. They come in, they're looking at the light. She looks at Tuck and she says, just breathe. And he's never forgotten that either. So what he's told me, he's like, you have to do it for somebody else. You have to pay it forward. And I've never forgotten that. People have done that for me. And I think it's important that we when you're given these opportunities, if you don't have the humanity that goes along with it, there's not a lot of point in doing it. And I just firmly believe
and it makes a lasting impression where it could have really turned you off to even want to stick around in the business if somebody just treated you with less respect than Tuck did.
100%. My first on-screen speaking role was in a Law and Order, and I was called back for the part, but I knew I didn't get it because they hired somebody else. Then that person dropped out, and then I was the next in line. So I got the part, and I'm on set my very first day, and Mario Van Peebles is directing, and he's also a very well-known actor and director.
Mm-hmm.
But most importantly, an actor, I think, also because he gets it. And I was doing my scene on the witness stand, and I was first up in the day, and I remember feeling the color drain from my face when the jury came in and they were setting up the cameras. I'd never seen anything like this before. And of course, it's one of the most iconic setups in television history. And I actually felt nauseous. I was like, am I going to get sick? I will never forget it. He came over to me and he just put his hand on my shoulder and he's like, hey, it's going to be okay. We're just going to set this up and we're going to shoot it and we'll see how it goes. He took the pressure off. I knew I was not his first choice for this part. And if I can thank him someday, I will, especially publicly. I just think it's so vitally important how we treat people when the cameras aren't rolling. I have very little patience for otherwise, to be honest with you. So
I love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Before we move on from Uncoupled, tell me about the conversation about your mom you had with your mom about the series. I love it. It's a great way to.
And we should talk about this. I don't know if the show is her cup of tea. And I asked her to watch because I really believe that, like I was saying before, with Neil's universal appeal, it's going to bring in an audience that maybe normally wouldn't watch a show about gay life in New York City.
Mm-hmm.
But what Darren and Jeff are striving for is what we all experience heartbreak and we all experience loss. And that's what the show starts on. And then he kind of goes through the 5 stages of grief. And I'm watching the show myself going, oh, I've been through that. Oh, I've been through that. There's not really a difference. We're all talking about the same thing. And so that's how I finally ended up getting my mom to watch. I did this movie, Dirty Sexy Saint, for Passionflix. There's some nudity in it. There's some sexual situations. And my mom was like, I can't do it. I'm so sorry. So I think she felt similarly with this show, is like, you're making out with a man in a hot tub. I have to like watch it like this. So my hope is for people like my mom that maybe are like, I don't know if this is my thing, that they give it a shot and maybe see that we're all not that different. And I think that's what makes it such an important show. I think that's why it's trending on Netflix. And I think that's why maybe they'll get a second season.
Oh, I think it will. It is. Yeah. It is trending. That's a good thing. Trending's a good lead, I guess, to think that it should have a second.
I hope so.
Second chance. Louis was asking, what drew you to acting?
Yeah, the phrase I think I keep saying is, I don't really remember a time in my life when I didn't want to be an actor. I feel like I was born an old man. And by that, I mean, when I was 10 years old, I remember I got like a makeup kit. And I remember like the first thing I thought to do was like old man makeup. And so I had like a cane. And the movies I grew up watching were not movies I think other kids my age were watching. I was watching a lot of Jerry Lewis. Remember watching Jack Lemmon in The Great Race and how he played those 2 different characters. I just couldn't get enough of that. My dad had a lot of influence on that. And just the idea of those things shape you. And now as a teacher, I ask students my first day of class, I always say, what are the things that you grew up watching? Because that's kind of what's going to influence you, not only as an actor, but as a person. So I think while a lot of other people were watching like Disney Channel, I was watching Jerry Lewis and Jack Lemmon and Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda. So that's what I mean by, I think ever since I was a kid, it was like, what does the body do? What does the voice do? And so it was a lot of character-y things that I could not get enough of. And you'll hear a lot of actors talk about like, oh, this is the story I wanted to tell, and they're using these actory words, and I'm just like, no, I just want to do it. Like I don't even. It's primal. It's gut. It's instinctual. There's no. I think as actors now in our adult lives, we think about these things a lot more. But as a kid, you just play. And Kevin Costner talks about this a lot. He's like, I'm just doing the same thing I did as a kid. I'm just lucky enough to get paid as an adult to do it.
Did you emulate Jerry Lewis and
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I recently did, you know, this. I recently did some work for the Alzheimer's Association, and so I did this speech about my dad and I, because he has it. We can talk about that some more as well. But because doing a Jerry Lewis voice at a young age, and me and my dad would do it together, and how that was sort of my way into my father's illness as an adult. He does not respond to music as much as we thought we would, and I think everybody talks about Alzheimer's as, oh, just play the music and they'll respond, and it wasn't working. But when we would do the Jerry Lewis voice, he would just pop right in, and we would have full conversations in this voice. And so of course, as an 8-year-old kid, you're just like, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. And there's a specific Jerry Lewis movie where he plays 7 different parts. It's called The Family Jewels. And of course, as a kid, I'm thinking, he plays 7 parts, he directed the movie, and he wrote the movie. Well, that's all I want to do. So I remember getting my parents' camcorder and was like, I can do all of it, especially with this new makeup kit I have. That's actually one of the reasons why I got into writing radio dramas as well, was because I would get frustrated with what I filmed. I was like, this doesn't look like a movie. And then I got some sound effects CDs for Christmas one year and was like, wait a minute, if I shut out the visual and I just have these sound effects CDs and a microphone, I can make anything. And that's one of the reasons why I ended up doing that radio Western Powder Burns as an adult, was because it's just a continuation of the things you're fascinated by as a kid. I think keeping in touch with the childhood imagination is, I think, 80% of being an actor. And then there's craft, of course, but
yeah. Well, that speech about that you made at that Alzheimer's Foundation was absolutely beautiful. And it's understandable, because I do know how music does play that huge part for Alzheimer's patients. But, you know, you and your father, Jerry Lewis, was more than music to you guys, you know?
And
so
I think, just to interrupt you really quickly,
yeah,
I'm talking about doing the voice as an 8-year-old kid, but he did it as an 8-year-old kid as well. So I think it's moreover tapping into the things that from his childhood, because those are the things that really stayed, where he won't remember what he had for breakfast, but he'll remember where he was when he saw the errand boy in 1963 or whatever.
So you said you ask students, you know, what they watched.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get some students who haven't?
That's a good question. During the pandemic, I was teaching a lot at the college level over Zoom, and just to kind of get an idea of their sensibility. I got a lot of Disney Channel, of course, but I had one actor. She said that she was obsessed with Al Pacino, and I never would have guessed that in a million years. But we had a moment where she was doing a scene, and she was getting very, very angry, and there was a lot of tension in her face. And I said, what you're doing is great, because it's a guttural, primal response. But I said, technically, I'm just going to tap you on the shoulder a little bit here. The closer that camera is to your face, the more we're going to see some of that tension. And it's kind of unnerving for the audience. It's like putting up bad wallpaper. We don't know why it doesn't work, but we know it doesn't work. So go back and watch Carlito's Way, Godfather 2, Glengarry Glen Ross, and watch Al Pacino when he gets angry. His jaw drops and everything is completely relaxed. And it's very strange, but you don't not believe that he's angry, but the technique comes in, and he's very relaxing here for those close-ups. And she was like, okay, and she did it because that's one of her actors that she loves watching. She came back the next week and she nailed the scene. And that's just a technical thing to fit the performance in the frame. I hesitate to say more on stage and less on screen, because that puts actors in a box real quick. And my whole thing is, does the performance fit the frame? You can do anything you want as long as it fits. And long story short, once I gave these students that freedom, I think they were like, oh, this isn't as hard as people talk about it is. And I agree.
What's the best part of teaching for you?
I think those aha moments are really exciting. I've stepped away from it for a little while recently, and one of the reasons is because I felt like my output was greater than my input. And I'm either 100 miles an hour or 0 miles an hour. I haven't really figured out the balance for myself, and I was giving so much of myself to students. And when I first started teaching, I would teach 2 classes a day, and then I'd fall asleep for like 3 hours. It just depleted me. And they would have these aha moments, and I was like, yes, this is why any teacher does what they do. But I couldn't figure out how to balance that for myself. And I think this was right around the time that you asked me to come on your show and talk more in depth about Alzheimer's. And I realized that I was so operating from such a depleted capacity that as much as I did want to talk about it, as much as I want to advocate from the rooftops for better care and better resources for people that have the disease, because it's percolating and underneath my skin every day, I couldn't do it. So I had to take some time, step back, fill my cup again. And now I'm able to give more of myself because I have more to give. Thank you, therapy. That's how I figured it out.
Well, good. Yeah. And I can imagine, I mean, watching a parent go through that, my friend, Steve just lost his mother this week from it.
My goodness.
After a very long time. And, and my best friend growing up, his mom lives in Argentina in a home like your dad. And, he basically, prays that would happen, because it's hard on you all of you mentally. I can't even, I lost my mother to lung cancer, and that's hard, but it's just a whole other ball game. I was just thinking, as you're talking about your students and you giving 100%, someday, maybe in the locker room or some other talk show, some of those students are going to reference David A. Gregory. And what he taught them, because that's what I've loved about doing the show. So many actors will reference, and some from a very long, the influence or the impact that they had on, their theater journey.
You're absolutely, I mean, I would be so lucky, but I get emotional thinking about it, not because I'm so great, but because the communities that I grew up in Alaska, there are people up there that are still some of the greatest actors and directors and creators I've ever seen, and nobody knows their name. And I am who I am because of those people. Obviously, my parents have so much to do with this humanity, but as far as the person I've become professionally, and I say this all the time, but if the town I grew up was any smaller, there wouldn't be opportunities. And if it was any bigger, I probably wouldn't have gotten those opportunities. But I had a lot of people take risks on me. And like I say, I was born an old man, so I think I always wanted to rise to the occasion of what an adult might think of me. But I have teachers, and unfortunately, a few of them have passed away in the last year. And I think about that all the time. They changed my life. And when I get an email from a student saying, yours was my favorite class of college, you can't give an award for that. There's no greater honor than that. And it's the most humbling. I learned so much teaching. Not teaching kids, teaching students. I did not expect the return in the classroom to be as great as it was. I truly did not. I was gobsmacked by that. So
I mean, my theater teacher is still one of my absolute, she is past. It's from, 5th grade or not high school, but, and I didn't go into it, and she had that much of an impact.
Certainly. Yeah.
It's something. I know theater is your first love. Is there a dream role that you'd love to play?
This is not a complicated answer, but only in the sense that I think that the things I've been asked to do on screen are not quite reflective of the capability that I have. And I think many actors will tell you that. And sometimes it's often that what you're asked to do on screen is usually shadow of what you're capable of, in the sense of like, oh, here's a moderately good looking guy. He's going to take off his shirt and be wear a leather jacket and be the bad boy, and that's super fun. And it can be very rewarding, especially if there's longevity in those kinds of parts. But I think over time, as I've gotten older and I start to match the old man I was born as, the parts that I'm drawn to are the ones with humanity and dignity and grace. And for some reason, that makes me drawn to, I'm too young for it now, but it's like Atticus Finch and To Kill a Mockingbird. It's like Mr. Holland's Opus. I think we're in a time period of, there's a lot of toxic masculinity in the world, and I don't know what the opposite word is, but I want to be a part of projects that show we have so much in this world of how men can be men, and we have to be manly men, and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I think we're missing the point of what it truly means to be an honorable man in today's society. Whatever that is, sign me up. I don't know who's at my door, but give me a second.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Maybe a package is coming.
Yeah, go ahead. This is super important. This is the exterminator. So we get exterminated once a month in our apartment. So
I love that. Only in New York, right?
Only in New York.
Only in New York. No, that, I mean, you are a I don't know the word, scholar and a gentleman. I mean, we teach empathy,
Yes, I'm still listening to you. I'm just directing him to the bathroom.
we need to teach empathy in this world.
I really believe that, and I talk to people that are like, some people have said to me that they're not capable of it, that they're like, oh, I think I'm too burnt out or whatever. And thank you very much. And I think I understand that. So the first thing that I talk to people about, I've had this conversation with my mom because she was taking care of my dad for so long. I can sign that too. That after so long taking care of my father, she was like, I don't know if I have anything left for people, which kind of goes to what I was saying before, is realizing when your cup is depleted, that it needs to be filled. So the key to empathy is actually taking care of yourself first. Thank you. And I didn't realize that. And I think that's part of the reasons why I was struggling as a teacher, was because I was like, I gotta be everything I can be for these students, but I wasn't taking care of myself. So the first step in empathy is actually to have it for yourself, which sounds very selfish and anti-empathetic, but it's actually the beginning of the puzzle, I think. And so maybe there is a way to teach it. I think the first thing is just to meet somebody where they're at, because there's a lot of hurting people out there, and
definitely are. The world is definitely hurting at the moment.
Yeah.
Take us back to your audition for One Life to Live. What do you remember?
I preface this to say, kind of like what I was talking about with Uncoupled, was I made the tape for Uncoupled being like, oh, I'm not going to get this, so everything's fine. So you're super relaxed. And one of the reasons why I think the One Life to Live audition went well is because I had just gotten another job. So it starts with the story of, I went in for an untitled James L. Brooks movie, and I ended up getting called back, and I went to his apartment to meet him and the casting director to play a minor part as a baseball player. But I had to read, they gave me some scenes from the movie just to read to make sure I could do it. And I read for him, and he was laughing, his famous laugh. It almost sounds like Kermit the Frog. It's like, ha, ha, ha. He has this really specific laugh that if you watch like Mary Tyler Moore show, you could hear these laughs, or Taxi, you can hear his laugh in the background. He stopped and he came to me and goes, well, you're definitely going to be in the movie. I just don't know what part yet. And I called my agent after, I was like, does this happen? And they were like, I mean, if it's from him, this Academy Award winning director, he's probably going to follow through with it. So I was on cloud 9. And then I had the call back for One Life to Live. And I say that to say I went in so relaxed. I was in a line with like 16 other guys. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, it's okay because I got a job. And I think you can't teach someone to be relaxed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
you can.
I'll credit James L. Brooks for the reason why I felt so relaxed at that audition. He just was so kind. I was like, wait a minute. And I'd only been in New York for a year and some change at that point. I knew enough to know it's not that easy and that things like that are very rare. And still to this day, that's one of the most rare experiences I've had. But so I went to the callback for One Life, which was down on 66th Street at the studio. I got on the subway, traveled up to 163rd where my apartment was in Washington Heights at the time. And I already had a voicemail on my phone saying, you got the job.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty quick. And now that I've been doing this for 15 years, I'm like, it never's that fast. You wait for 2 weeks or months and you're just like,
yeah. Well, and it's never when you're, at the audition with James that, he says you're definitely in the movie.
No, not in the least. And that guy, he kept me around on that set for so long and I was paid for my time. So that is reflected in the residuals that I get on that. I mean, I cannot say enough good things. And I don't get to talk about him a lot because I'm not in the movie a lot at all. I'm in it for like 30 seconds, but I worked on it for almost 2 months and I had scenes that were cut. And that guy, sorry, I just really pivoted.
Yeah, no, I'm glad.
That guy wrote me a letter telling me I had to make a lot of cuts in the movie. Unfortunately, these scenes that we shot together are no longer in the film, but there is one bit that is still in the film. He said, I think you're really funny. I mean, to this day, I'm like, what did I do to deserve? Like, I could not have had a better first experience doing something like that. And he, I have a story I can tell you. I've never told this story publicly. And so there was a scene, it's not in the movie, where Reese Witherspoon's character comes over to Owen Wilson's apartment. No, it's actually technically my apartment in the movie, but there's no way you would know that. And Owen Wilson is on this baseball team with all of us, and we're all having a good time. And the whole point of the scene is that she's like, baseball players are so rude and like nobody's paying attention to me and da 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 da. And so in the script, it just says that she leaves, but Jim Brooks wanted me to be at the door with an umbrella and be like, see you later, thanks for coming. And I was looking at the scene going, I gotta make some kind of stamp here, right? I know that the scene is about her not feeling welcome. And so her character in the movie, she plays a woman named Lisa. So right before she leaves, I hand her an umbrella, I pop Owen Wilson on the shoulder, and I said, nice meeting you, Liza, and the door closed. And because I got her name wrong on purpose, right? Jim Brooks is howling with laughter. And he's like, that's it. That's exactly what I want. He's laughing. Reese Witherspoon is laughing. Owen Wilson comes up to me and he's like, that was pretty funny. And I'm like, I did it. This is it. I did it. And then the poor script supervisor comes up. She was actually, her name is Lisa. And I was like, no, I know. Sorry. It's a bit. I'm doing a bit. Perhaps if I ever am nominated for an Academy Award, somebody will find the footage of that and show the world. But
I mean, were you pinching yourself to be on a set with Owen Wilson and Reese Witherspoon?
Absolutely.
One of your first things?
Yes. And again, those are moments where I was also on set. One of the other guys playing one of the other baseball players is Dominic Lombardozzi, who has just blown up in the last decade. He was in The Irishman. He's done so much great work, and he sort of took me under his wing on that project. And I remember I had a birthday on that job, and
I know who he is. I just looked him up. Yeah,
he's fantastic. The next day,
Ray Donovan, right?
Yes. So the next day after my birthday, he took me out for my birthday. A couple of the other guys playing baseball players, we all went out. We're at one bar. We ran into Paul Rudd, who was also in the movie. He was like, oh, happy birthday. Like, Paul remembers everybody's name. Everybody is who you want them to be. But the next day I overslept. I missed the alarm, so I was really late to get the crew van to go to set. And to this day, it's one of the reasons why I do not drink if I'm working, because I don't ever want to sleep in or miss a. Dominic figured it out. He was like, oh man, he's running behind. I wasn't sick. I was just like, whoa, I'm really tired. Dominic had just rented a car so he could go out and play golf. And he was like, you know what? Go with everybody, crew van can go. I will drive him myself. So I was on time, ended up being on time because Dominic drove me, and didn't miss the day of work or whatever, or have to take a cab because he was looking out for me. And that's another story of somebody, I've never done that since. I like scared to death of that happening.
Yeah, I'm sure. But again,
Dominic, he had my back.
He makes a difference. Huge difference.
He didn't, there was no criticizing. There was no, man, you're so unprofessional. He was just like, get in the car. I got you. Don't worry about it. I'll never forget that. And I, just turned 23 years old. I was a kid. And he was like, he also helped me make tapes. I remember auditioning for Gossip Girl at the time. I made a tape in his hotel room and he was like coaching me through it. He's like, I really, he's like this rough and tumble near. He's like, I really want you to fucking get this, kid. You can do this. And I was just like, okay. Yeah, he's just, I just swore. Can I swear on your show?
Yeah, you can okay. Swear. Okay. So here we are again, a week from tomorrow.
A week from tomorrow. Oh my goodness.
It's your birthday.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. My God. Didn't it?
I love that you just looked that up.
I was like, August. Oh.
What will you do to celebrate? How does David Gregory celebrate?
Well, I can tell you, and this might be a good transition. I'm usually pretty good at them. A couple years ago, because I was writing this play about Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, I was like putting out in the universe. I'm like, I'm going to get the next phase of this play going. So I found a really great vegetarian Mexican restaurant in New York. I'm not vegetarian, but the name of the restaurant is Fonda. And I was like, this is too perfect. Too perfect. So a couple years ago with my wife, actually more like 3 or 4 years ago now, I was like, Jen, we got to go. And this has to be like a prophetic meal. We're sitting at this meal on my birthday being like, this is the year. And that was the year that Broadway producers signed the play.
Wow. So is that the restaurant on 9th Avenue?
I believe it is. It's down in Chelsea.
Chelsea, yeah. I love that. I didn't realize it was a vegetarian Mexican. I love it.
Last I checked, because I had this really good vegetarian enchilada that I still think about. And so it's going to be something, I believe, with the turning of another year. It's not a huge birthday for me. It's 37. So I guess now I'm in my late 30s. But I believe in like setting the tone for the next year. And if I'm being perfectly honest, the last couple have been difficult, not because of the pandemic, but because I have really, really great memories with my dad on my birthday. And some of them are just so intimate, subtle memories that are not, it's not like we went to a big concert. It was like when I was 14, he took me out to breakfast, forgot his wallet, and I had to sit there and pretend to finish eating my toast while he drove across town to get his wallet. And then he came back and he was just like, I'm so sorry, and I ruined your birthday. I was like, no, you didn't. Like, I'm never going to forget this. You know what I mean? Like, and then, my 19th birthday was the day I started college, and he flew down with me, and he was just like, I just felt like a passing of the torch that day. I was like, I could just sense what he was doing. He flew down. I was doing a contract in Kansas City. I was doing Fiddler on the Roof for 4 months, and he flew down to spend my 21st birthday with me. Like, so that day has held a lot of emotion for me. So the only way I can flip it is to turn it outwards and make it not about me. So weirdly enough, if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm a little nervous about it simply because I haven't had a non-emotional experience on my birthday in the last couple of years. And I carry that with me, even like leading up to the day. So my little brother is born on the 18th, the day before. We're 3 years apart, but we're 1 day apart. And so it's much easier for me to like call him and like talk about him and like be all about him. And it's a very strange thing. So I'm cautiously optimistic simply because I feel like I'm in a much better place than I was a year ago. I still miss him. He's still on the planet, but he's no longer the man that he used to be. So I was weirdly watching an episode of Westworld where they talked to one of these characters who's a robot, who was experiencing emotional pain because of a memory implanted in their head. And they said, well, we can take that away from you. And the robot said, no, but this is all I have of that person. And I immediately burst into tears and was like, if I can switch my thinking into telling myself that my grief is an act of love, and the harder I grieve, the more I love this person, and that because he can no longer give me that in the way he used to, that I carry it for both of us, much like a father would hold a newborn baby. And that baby has no consciousness of who this person is, but that father is all about that bundle in his arms. I get very emotional thinking about that. Now it's my turn to be that for him, where it's not in his consciousness. And every time I'm like, God, because I used to say I would give anything to not feel this anymore. And then I was like, wait a minute, that is a manifestation of the love I have for this person. And I will carry that. Happy birthday to me.
There just really are no words for anybody going through this. For somebody who might be watching this today or another time, and one of their family members is diagnosed, what's the one thing you would want to impart that you wish maybe somebody had imparted to you to help?
Yeah, I think it depends on where their spot is in the diagnosis. I wasn't angry at my dad, but I definitely was like, if I had just gotten diagnosed, the first diagnosis was when he was 58 with what's called mild cognitive impairment, which they were pretty sure would turn itself into some form of dementia. So young. And now we're going through my dad's papers and things, and I'm ravenous for anything that he wrote down because he has the most brilliant mind. And I'm like, why didn't he write these things down? Why didn't he write us letters? And I even thought about it, like, God forbid I should get a diagnosis like that. I was like, I will write my wife a letter every day until I can. So she'll have it. So I think the first thing I would do is pounce on the memories that you can have, and to not be afraid of talking about what's coming. I didn't even look it up. I didn't know until last year how Alzheimer's can take someone's life. I didn't know. I just thought, oh, it's a disease of the brain, and then it shuts down. I didn't know anything beyond that. So there is something to be said for, I think certain of my family members have more of a capacity than others. And those are the ones leading the charge. Or I say this, my older brother is a major in the Air Force, and he's very good at compartmentalizing disaster in a way that, because I am so deeply empathetic, I'm not. And there are times where I will melt to the floor in grief, and he's like, I got this, it's okay. So thank God we are all of different minds. And then we're all there to hold up my mom, who's going through the brunt end of it. So I think first and foremost, it's pouncing on the memories that you can have, and making sure that you are aware of what's coming, and have a big thing for me that I didn't know that no one talks about is getting my dad's name on a waiting list for a nursing home. I didn't know that was a thing. And that's one of the reasons why he's at a nursing home in Arizona, close to where my little brother lives, but not in Alaska where I'm from, is because there was a waiting list. And the care is so expensive. And so I will be screaming this from the rooftops. I really believe we have to do better as a country. There are certain pockets of this country that do not have the resources that we need. And with the baby boomer generation being diagnosed at a higher rate, we need to have that happen. This is not a quick end to someone's life at all. Especially, my dad's doctor has said he's healthy as a horse. The worst part about it is his brain. So his body will take a while to break down. But first and foremost, anybody listening or watching this that has a loved one in a recent diagnosis, it doesn't even matter if that person is elderly. And I say that to say, like, well, they've had a good life. It sucks no matter what. And they have my deepest empathy for that.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
When you were talking about your birthday and those wonderful memories, I was going to say this and then I didn't, but you just really sort of said it in that piece. all those great memories from your dad, maybe not on your birthday, but you need to take that on a day when you're ready and write them down.
Yeah.
Like have a book, for yourself that really makes you smile when you open and see all those things in one place.
You're absolutely right. My little brother was, because my dad had these great turns of phrase, just beauty. He had a poet's heart, and he just would say things that I was just like in awe of, and everybody that knew him in awe of, which is partly what makes this even more tragic. But my little brother a couple years ago was like, hey, can you write down all the phrases of dads that you really like, and we're going to make a book. And this is another thing, I say this to anyone going through this. Sometimes when you're in the throes of grief, you can't remember. Everything is like blocked. And so for a long time, I was so blocked because I was broken. And my poor wife lost her mom during the pandemic. And there was a worry of like, because that was so scary and sad and hard to watch, is that the only version of that person I'm going to remember? And so it is on us to carry this thousands of year old tradition of carrying this oral history of this person, to be like, no, this is the guy that they were. And so the comfort I got in that was I realized I don't remember the phrases Dad would say a lot because I say them. They're a part of my DNA. They're a part of my daily life. We've become so similar as he has decayed. And now I'm in my late 30s. I feel like I've become this version of him. I am authentically myself, but how can I not be? I had a mustache last year and people were like, my God, it's your dad. And that is like, so when I can't remember, it's because it's already pulsing through me. And there's great relief and release in that. I said to somebody on the phone the other day, I said the phrase, iron sharpens iron. And I stopped as soon as I said it. I was like, that's my dad. And I'd been saying it for so long that I had forgotten that that's a piece of him already in me. And I forgot where the tracks began and where they ended. And that's kind of beautiful to me. It's like, he has shown up in my life more in the last couple of years than it's pretty spectacular. So yes, I think making that book is a great idea. As I get more clarity, as it becomes more hindsight. Yeah.
I'm sure. Let's segue. You wrote and produced, we talked about it earlier a little, the podcast Powder Burns, about a blind sheriff in post-Civil War Texas. Where did the idea come from, and what were you trying to do with the series?
Yeah, I think I really, really wanted to do, this was the idea, I'd say around 2013, 2014. So scripted podcasts were not as in vogue as they are now, but Serial had just come out and everybody was obsessed with it. It was like a binge listen and
obsessed.
Yeah. And I was like, how can we bring back the radio drama without, to an audience that is glued to Netflix, basically. Like, we're a very visually stimulated generation. And I thought, well, the only way to do that is to make the lead character blind, so the audience has to experience it without their sight. And to be honest with you, I tried it a couple different ways before settling on a Western. I tried like a space opera where a guy wakes up in space and can't see and is like, what happened? And the machines have malfunctioned and his crew's dead and he doesn't know what to do. And I wrote 2 episodes, my computer crashed and I lost it. I'm like, so save your hard drive. And then I tried it as a detective and wrote even less, and then landed on the Western, which is kind of interesting simply because you take cell phones, you take technology out of the mix, and you only have people in their circumstance. And then I thought, well, what if we did modern situations in a classic Western? So our second episode is all about this mentally challenged boy who holds up a bank, and the sheriff has to decide, do I do like swift mob outlaw justice because he did something wrong? Do I hold this kid accountable for something he doesn't even know he did? And then the writing started to happen. And then each episode just poured out. We have an episode that Ed Asner guest starred in where he plays my character's father. I play the deputy on the show. And what would Alzheimer's looked like in 1860s Texas when they didn't know what it was, if anything. And there's a lot more fear in a lack of diagnosis. And that's the episode that won us these awards and kind of put us on the map. And Ed Asner had a lot to do with that, I think, but also John Wesley Shipp playing our blind sheriff. He just crushes it for 7 episodes. It's essentially 7 episodes, so 7 days in the last week of this blind sheriff's term. And he knows he's not going to get reelected. The last episode is the election. And he's like, well, how do I go out with some amount of dignity? And ask questions, I think some pretty dark questions of the audience, to be like, just because you're defeated, does that mean you lay down your sword? And I think about that a lot as a country and as a person. Like, when things look the bleakest, what are we going to do with that? I think it's very defining of your character when you don't just roll over and play dead. So, and there's a lot of my dad in that too.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Thank you.
I told you I watched the first episode, or listened to the first episode. Going to listen tomorrow on my drive. John Wesley Shipp played your father.
Yes. Yeah.
What was it like working with John?
I think a lot of, I'll tell you this first and foremost, is any psychiatrist, any therapist will tell you that because I miss my dad, I'm chasing my dad. I chase it in the writing. And John, without projecting, because he knows this, he has been a calming spirit in my life as a person. And of course, anybody that knows One Life to Live knows that he played a despicable father, which was made, his performance made all the more impressive by how lovely he was off screen and how he just really took me under his wing. And one of the things I have said to students, and I still ascribe to this day, is we were doing a scene that was very emotionally volatile. And normally we read through it together. Actors will read through in the dressing room, or they'll read through in the hallway. And we did it together, and he stopped me and he goes, "Don't bruise it." And I've never forgotten that. He said, let's save it for when we get up there and shoot the scene. And ever since then, if there's something volatile happening in a scene and you're just rehearsing it, don't bruise it, because it's already there. You don't have to conjure it. You don't have to act. It's already there. And he's the one that taught me that it's okay to, and I love the word bruise, because it's like,
yeah, I do too.
You could hurt it. You want to keep it right where it's at. So, to say I've learned a lot from him is an understatement. He has a very regal countenance to him. He's a king, and he is, because he does a lot of these Comic Cons because of the Flash. He is more than what you want when you meet him in person. He is so gentle. And he said this to me once that really stuck out to me, because his father's passed away recently, a Baptist minister. And he said, I see what I do at these Comic Cons as my ministry. And he and I have talked about our thoughts about religion and organized religion separately, but he's like, I believe I'm on earth to touch people's lives. And he's like, if these people come up to me and they say X, Y, or Z changed their life, I'm going to spend time with them. I'm going to connect with them, because what else are we doing this for? And I cannot say enough good things about him. And he said he would jump into Powder Burns, no questions asked. He was just like, let's do it. And I kept trying to pay him, and he kept refusing my money. He's just a class act, and I adore him.
Well, and I know you thanked him as well, but I was quite touched seeing that he promoted our chat here today.
Yeah.
Not, I don't get that a lot, of other. It's very nice to see the care. That's you can just tell. I mean, that doesn't. I've done this 2.5 years. I couldn't tell you people who are not part of this. Joining us for this interview, going out, on his level and promoting it. Writing seems to be a passion, and acting, I know, is a passion. Is there one right now that you're finding more fulfillment with?
Yeah, this kind of goes to what I was saying before, is sometimes the roles that come your way as an actor are sort of a cookie cutout of who you really are rather than who you really are. And I say this because people are like, well, you're an actor, you should be a good liar for a living. And it's actually the opposite. I think good actors tell the truth. That's how you know someone's good. You can spot bad acting because they're like, it's not the truth. And it's that simple. So we can get super technical and actory and all these silly words that actors use all the time, but it's like, is it the truth or is it not? And sometimes I think I get put into a corner. Now, sometimes being in a corner means you're still working, and that's wonderful. And sometimes it's a job. But I think I found with the writing that I'm able to showcase the person that I am, the complete humanity that's bubbling underneath, that is actually not the guy who is shirtless all the time. And that has been very fulfilling. Now, if I could find a way to combine the two, that's obviously where it's at. But the piece that I've been putting all of that into lately is this play about Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart that we're about to go into what I think is going to be our last developmental workshop before doing a full production. And I've been working on it on and off for about 10 years. And though I'm not in it, and though it's not going to be the play, you know, I think I have to be a little older to technically be in it, but it is about these two men who are best friends who just happen to be movie stars who are complete opposites politically. And the more I've seen the country change in the last half a decade, the more I'm like, maybe this country needs something like this, not to beat them over the hand or to teach them a lesson, but to hold a mirror up and say, I'm so sorry.
That when I heard you talking about this and that they were on different sides politically, I thought how brilliant. And I heard you say in that interview, if you can leave the earth having done one project, this is it. Why is this project it?
I think we have a wonderful director. His name is Brady Schwind, and he's come onto the project last year and sort of encouraged me to write more pieces of myself. One of the ways he did that was he said, I was explaining to him sort of the political discord in my own family. And he was like, you know, that's not unlike Jane and Henry. And he's like, I think you will find more success in this play now that you've researched it, read all these books, listened to all these interviews, put those aside and write about your family. And there's a monologue that Jane has at the end of the play where she tells her dad everything that she wants from him, everything she misses about him, and that he's standing right in front of her and he's missing it. And I was like, I think that's me with my mom. And nothing against my mom. I love her, but I think we had to agree to disagree for a long time. And then one day I woke up and I was like, I just miss my mom. And I had to tell her, I was like, I think I'm going to put all this aside just so I can be your son again. And we just not talk about anything else. And the other day we talked on the phone for 2 hours. I realized I was asking the characters in the play to solve their differences and I wasn't doing it myself. And this director pointed that out to me. And he's like, you have to push and it's going to be difficult. And I think if I were to die tomorrow, anybody that reads this play is going to see me. And that's accurate because the little boy that watched Henry Fonda and Jimmy Stewart, it's imbued itself into my personality and I cannot separate them. So yes, the play starts out and has elements of, you know, it talks very slow and it's very much like, well, what are we going to do today? And it's all of that because it's got to give the audience what they want. And then we quickly find out these are just men trying to be good dads who were worried that they may not have been very good sons. Once I figured that out, the doors blew off. So that people are going to walk out of the theater and realize they're going to see a side of them that they didn't know existed, which I think if we're going to make them pay Broadway ticket prices, we should give them something they wouldn't get from just watching a movie. But they're going to get the thing that they expect, and then they're going to see the side that they didn't know existed. And I cannot wait.
Brilliant. I cannot wait. Do you my last question, do you have dream casting?
I mean,
you got to put it out into the world, David.
I do. Listen, John Wesley Shipp played Henry Fonda in a couple workshops for us, and crushed it. One of the great things about these two is because there's 4 parts of the show. I don't want to give too much away.
Yeah.
But there's obviously Henry Fonda, there's Jimmy Stewart, there's Jane, and there's another. I'm going to keep the role of mystery for a while because we're still in development with it, and I want to make sure it's going to work. We're gearing up for our developmental reading in New York. We've cast Michael McGorry Rose as Henry Fonda. He's a friend of the director's, and I don't know his work very much, but I've watched his stuff, and he's just right. And then a friend of mine named Quinn Van Antwerp is going to play Stewart. And what we're going to try is younger actors in the roles just to see how that works. Because what happens is there's 2 timelines in the play. There's one in 1972, the night that Jane Fonda is going to go off to Vietnam. That's considered the present. And then they flash back to 1947 when they're both in their early 40s and they're arguing over the House Un-American Activities Committee and a couple other things. So we find them in their 40s and in their 60s, and we've got to find the balance somewhere in there. But I mean, we would be so lucky to have anybody interested in the script. I think somebody mentioned to me the other day, George Clooney and Tom Hanks. I mean, could you imagine?
I could with you, my friend. I could,
yeah.
You know.
But
I mean, this really does sound fascinating, and I can't wait.
Thank you. It's my heartbeat, and it's the best thing I've ever written. So I'm.
Well, I'm putting the invite. You're welcome back when we can talk more about the play.
Thank you.
You really are a gentleman and a scholar and a good person. Really a pleasure to talk to you, David.
Thank you, and congratulations on 300 episodes.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled for you. I'm so thrilled for you.
Thank you. Kind of crazy, but you know what the pandemic does, you know.
Yeah.
Turn lemons into a little lemonade.
That's right. Well done.
You have a good birthday. Try to, and if you go to Fonda, have a margarita.
Thank you, Alan. I thank you for your grace and your humanity. I really appreciate it.
I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Thank you to David Gregory for spending this time and opening your heart to all of us. If you haven't yet subscribed to my YouTube channel, please do so down below. You can turn on the notifications for reminders of all upcoming shows. And don't forget, The Locker Room is available on all your favorite streaming platforms. Just search The Locker Room and download your favorite episodes. I am headed out of town for a couple days of some rest and relaxation. I will see you guys before the end of the month. Have a great evening, everybody, and please stay safe.